Hey guys, welcome back to Aiden's Minis. So, I promised a video about this guy, and I thought I'm going to do it because no one else is home right now, and I got a bit of time. So, we are going to paint this guy from where he is now to a finished model. If I knew how to edit, I would throw in a cool little side panel showing the finished model beside this one, but I don't know how to do that, so sorry, you're going to have to wait till the end. Now, I will tell you, I kind of cheated. I painted the base, the horse, and his skin tone first, outside of the camera. The skin tone, because it needed 1 or 2 or 3 or something like that coats, because I thinned it way too much. Same with the horse hair itself. And the base, it's because it's just one color right now. The important point is that this guy is going to look, at some point, something more like one of my finished Mongolian guys here. Now, so I'm going to try and explain a bit of the lore as I go while we paint, so I can kind of give you an idea of what these guys are supposed to be for my role-playing world. So, I'll give you a quick rundown of the world itself. Very, very short if I can help it. It's a massive world that I've been working on for a few years now, about 2 or 3. But theirs is actually one of the newer factions that I haven't been able to flesh out that much. So I'll tell you what I can of the world, give you a bit of stuff on the faction themselves, and I'll paint this guy as we go. So, let's start with first what we need. Obviously a lot of colors, but I'll show you them in a second. Generally what I go with is 3 brushes like this. The one on the far left there is for kind of in between bulk painting. It'll cover most surfaces. For instance, this it's not a saddle, the kind of horse blanket underneath that he sits on, the saddle's placed on. It'll cover that kind of thing. This is more for bases. Obviously, we're going to skip most of it for a little bit, because obviously the base is already done, or at least the very first base coat is. And this is a fine detail brush. Now, these are all from the dollar store. I know some people mention stuff like Winsor Newton and such else like that. I never have bought any of those, and I don't really see a reason, because I'm happy with my painting as it is. You are completely free to, though. I have only heard good things about things like that. It's just that I don't really have the access to funds for that kind of thing. But, you know, maybe one day in the future. Maybe I'll do a review of one of them. But first, what we did was... actually, before I explain to you the model itself, let's show you the colors. So, I'm going to go with all Citadel here. You don't have to, and honestly, I'm trying to convert all of my Citadel to non-Citadel. For instance, my Administratum Gray. This is actually not Administratum Gray anymore. Looks like it, though. But this is actually Dolphin Gray from, I believe it's called Art Deco. I get it from the dollar store for about $1.50 here in Canada. Some of these, though, I haven't been able to replace. The red I have, but I can't remember what it's called right now. I'll try and do a video where I show you what I can convert. I do not believe if anybody has made a good Blood for the Blood God kind of alternative, so that's kind of there. Oh, sorry, I meant to mention this is Mephiston Red. So Administratum Gray is what I do bases for, and light grays. You do not need to do the rim of the bases Administratum Gray. People do them whatever color they want. I've seen black, I've seen red, I've seen green, brown, everything. You can do whatever you want. I just do it because it sticks the bases out more for me, because I'm half blind essentially because of, you know, glasses. But this is Leadbelcher. Again, this is another one I've actually replaced. It looks the exact same. But what I do is I take close enough paints, mix them into the bottle itself. So it's a bit like the original color and then the replacement. This is a new Zandri Dust. I do not know an alternative yet. Same for Ushab T-Bone. Deepkin Flesh. We've got Mornfang Brown. I love this brown. Dryad Bark, which is a really good brown, and this one I've actually also replaced. This one I believe is burnt umber, but I can't remember. I'll do a check later. Abaddon black. This is one of the fastest to replace because all you need for a replacement of black is just black paint. You can do any black paint, in my experience. Just mix in a bit of medium and you're good. Now, shades, I do not know how to replace these yet for most of them. For black, I can. I actually got a dip wash from Vallejo like 2 or 3 years ago. Well, actually 4 years ago now. And it's lasted this long. But Athonian Camo Shade, Carroburg Crimson, Reichland Flesh Shade. Now, I'll explain them as I go. But, suffice to say, each of my nations generally have similar ethnicities in them. But, for nations such as my Mongolian faction, we do have a new skin tone. So, I will explain other skin tones as I get to them. But for my Mongols, I'm trying to go for an actual kind of Mongolian, oh, sorry, I knocked the camera there, Mongolian style skin tone. Not perfect, obviously, but you know, this is what it's going to kind of look like in the end there. Now, what we're going to do is, I'm going to explain what I painted, and we'll go from there. The skin is 2 layers of Xandri dust to give it this look. The horse is just white, which, again, another one easy to replace. Actually, I should grab a white, but I'll leave it for now. If I need to, I'll grab it off camera. But yeah, horse is just pure white, because I'll show you later all of my painted horses. This is the only one that's white, so it's kind of giving the lord like a sense of, you know, he's a wealthy lord, so he gets the kind of horse no one else can get. But yeah, and his weapon is going to be iron. The base is dryad bark for a nice chocolatey color, but we're actually going to swap that. So I actually painted them all brown initially. One day I will show you pretty much all my models, but you'll quickly notice a lot of them go with dryad bark as a base, and I thought that's kind of, you know, doesn't really give off the kind of steppe kind of feeling, so I went with this. It's a blend of greens, which I will show you later. I completely forgot to pull them out, but I'll pull them out off camera in a second. It's a blend of greens with a Beal Tan green wash. It's a dark wash from Citadel on top of it. Actually, you can look right here. This is what I mean by that gray. That's Administratum gray right there. Another thing, magnets. All of my models have magnets in their bases. Actually, let's see. Yeah, even this guy. Quick explanation for my process of models is I build the model. I'll actually show you the entire process to some degree when I get down to my video for Scaventide. But I build the model, right? And then we put on, we add on any little kit bashes like I showed when I first showed these guys off. You've got the little shield there, that bow, you know, these arrows, that quiver, you know. Not all, and again, not all models need a lot of kit bashing. These guys are personally, in my opinion, very good looking. I did actually, this kind of cuts into the lore a bit, I did trim down the spikes all over the snout. I didn't for this because I honestly completely forgot about them until they were already attached, and second, I just didn't know if it would turn out looking good. So I just left it, but if I could go back from the start, I would carve off this and, you know, replace the design with something. But the steppe is not a rich area, obviously, which is why in my setting they often are pillagers, kind of like a mix of Attila the Hun and Genghis Khan. That's not to say they aren't, you know, like self-sufficient, but they are very much a warrior people in my setting. So, but they do not have a ton of wealth for, you know, fancy smithing. Almost said like 3 separate words there. So they have simple. Again, ignore this. The rest of the model's better. Actually, this is a bad model because he's also got the belly. I kind of saw it as fine because he's a bannerman, so I assumed he'd be, you know, kind of like a noble to some degree, or a friend of the nobility. But yeah, essentially I tried to trim off all of the fancy smithing stuff that would have cost a lot more money, because my setting is roughly medieval, kind of early medieval to late medieval. There's maybe 1 or 2 factions that are heading towards the Renaissance kind of timeline, but yeah, that's it. But yeah, So on to the actual point of this video. Let's get to painting. So essentially what you want to do, in my opinion, is first choose kind of, oh, sorry, it's not focusing. First choose kind of the biggest things that you're going to get paint on top of that you don't mind, and do those first. So for instance, and also to kind of make it easier, if you look here, you've got this for right here, which is very good. It's for like kind of like what he's sitting on. But you also have that same spot right there in the metal. Same underneath here and here. And we turn it around, same thing. It's kind of hidden underneath there and there. That's going to be hard to get through with no matter what brush I use, without messing up all the details around it. So what I do is I choose kind of things like that, things that are very complicated, and just get them over with first so they're out of the way. Now, here's another consideration. I'm not great with color theory, but I know, some things. Horse is white. Let's try and go with a dark color for the overall body here, for contrast. So what I'm thinking, I'm not sure about this yet, but I'm thinking I'm going to go with a dark brown for this here. And I'll do either a light brown or a black fur on the outside, this little stray stuff. And my leather will have to be another color entirely. So what I actually might do is I'm probably going to do dryad bark, then I'm going to do Mournfang brown, and then I'm going to do black leather straps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the first step. I'll show you what it looks like after, because I'm going to do this off camera, so you don't need to watch 10 minutes of it getting painted and dried. I'll do that, show you what it looks like, continue from there. Hope to see you soon. Hey guys, welcome back. Well, it's not really welcome for you, it's more for me. This is the next day. So we're going to continue painting this guy. So yesterday, I can't remember everything I got, but essentially we kind of left a little bit undone just because we ran out of time. So today we're going to focus on skin and a few other little bits and pieces here and there that we forgot or left behind. I wanted to mention I missed a few things yesterday that I painted and didn't tell you about. Remember that most horse models from Games Workshop have these metal kind of boot things where you put your boots in when you're riding a horse, like in real life. So I colored those in metal as well. I ended up going with red here. It kind of helps with the fact that these are going to be red, these little runic symbols, and it kind of helps it stick out. It's kind of like an accent tone kind of thing, which is also why the arrows use the red. Moving on, though. Let's see, there. So we've pretty much finished the horse himself. I could always add more if I wanted to, but I'm kind of happy where he is. The runes we have to finish. We also have to do skin, like I mentioned. Some of the metal, like here. Now, normally for most of this faction, sorry, it just keeps doing that. It's trying to focus on two things at once. For most metals for this faction, because they're supposed to be a poor faction, as I mentioned, we'd go with iron all around. But because he is, to a degree, a noble, we're going to add in a little bit of gold. So, I'm just going to try and change the camera angle a bit. Whatever. That should be okay. So, here we go. So we're going to go with Retributor armor, which in my opinion is the best gold I've ever found. Now, I have tried making an alternate to this or finding, something that would replace it for cheaper. Didn't work out. I haven't found one yet. One day, though, I'm sure I will. Oops, sorry. There we go. So you can see how that does kind of stand out a bit more. We're also going to do the same for the pommel, the bottom here, this little bit of metal. And we'll do the other side. Now, here's the thing. There might be a gem in there as the pommel. Oh, sorry, the camera. I'm not sure. There is texture there for something. I'm not sure what it's supposed to be, but in the end, it doesn't really matter. For me, anyway. For you, you can try and look into it more. But yeah. Alrighty, I'm also going to replace the metal hilts and stuff on these swords. But I'm going to do that off camera, so I don't need to bother you with it. See you in a bit. And we're back. finished up replacing the gold, I also put gold on the little nubs on this horse's helmet. But yeah, so now we are going to choose a color. Actually, give me 1 second. I'm going to try and change the angle of the camera. Give me 1 moment. Alrighty, I just switched it a bit, I think. I shifted the thing around a bit. Hopefully this will get it to stop focusing on the wrong thing. Now, we've still got the skin to do, which is pretty simple, and we also have these rune stones. I honestly, as far as I can tell, that's pretty much everything done as a base. Like there's we could do some highlighting, but this is kind of like the base colors all finished. So first we should do, let's do the simpler, actually no, let's do the skin because there's more steps involved. So like I said, for Mongolian skin, I went with this Xandri dust. It's actually slightly different from the paint I used for the Japanese skin tone, which is Baylor brown. But I'm going to paint this Reichland flesh shade onto his skin. There we go. Yeah, there. Just a second. I'm gonna lock my there. Hopefully the camera should stay at that distance now. I locked it in place so it shouldn't stop focusing on what I'm pointing at now. We want to spread this out, and we don't want to get it too, we don't want it to sit and make splotches like that right there. But what you do is with wash, you can actually kind of use it like a wet palette, where you use, like, I'll show you. We used up a bunch, right? But we still need to spread it, but instead of getting more wash, we'll just grab it from the spots that don't need it. Spread that around a bit more. Take a little bit of that excess and put it on the hand here. Now, this doesn't always work. Like right now I still am kind of out of it, so try and take some more, but not too much, because you don't want to drown the model in it now when you do have to get a little bit more. Now I actually messed up because I just realized the hilt's unpainted while we're here. So let me close this flesh shade, and let's choose a new color. Now we could go with black for the leather, but his wrist is already black, which reminds me I actually got gold on it when I painted that hilt. But we could go black for the leather and make it, kind of match with the leather, but then the problem is that wristband itself is already black. We could go with brown, but brown's kind of more of the furs and stuff like that. So let's not do that. We could do this light brown, but same thing, kind of more for furs. What I'm thinking instead is red, much like the few little highlight bits here and there. We'll do a bit of red on there. So fist on red. Let's see, I'm going to try and paint this. I hope I get a good shot. I kind of got to focus because I don't want to get any on the hands if I can help it. So I can't really watch through the camera as I do this. There we go. Ideally, you would have done this beforehand. And again, it's not perfect. There's a little band right there in between the two fingers. Yeah, I'll try and paint it. Again, though, if you're doing this, make sure you get this done before you paint the hand. That's a bit better. Okay. So now, another thing while we're up here. His beard is unpainted. Now, I haven't actually chosen out a color for him, but I kind of like the idea of him having the same color of hair as his horse. So we're going to give it black. There we go. Now what I try and do is I try and paint all of the jutting out bits, so it's, you know, it's the details that are built in that are getting the paint. But honestly, with beards, you can also go a little crazy, because obviously beards aren't clean, or, you know, they aren't always perfect. I know I have one, so let's go a bit higher. Now this is just a simple beard. I'm not trying to, you know, win a golden demon or something with like that. So for now, this should be good. I'm gonna unlock the camera now, let it kind of focus. So that's sorted. Now we need a color for the stones. I'm thinking gray, because stone is generally gray. I'm gonna go with a darker gray though. So this color, actually, give me one moment. I'm gonna have to find it. I'll be right back. This color, sorry, I just got back, is actually not black or white or any actual official color. I just mixed enough black and white together till I got this gray. It's a very dark gray. It's darker than Mechanicus standard gray, which is my darkest gray. So you can use, again, whatever color you really want. You don't need to use, you know, specifically, like, do what I do and make your own sometimes, but it's just something I do. Now that's an issue though. If you look, you can see that really went on there. It's a bit too thick. There. Sorry, it's not really focused. There. The camera's actually giving me better view on the stuff that I'm painting. You can see a lot of brush strokes though. Nah, that's okay. That one's not really going to be noticed too much, but if you can help it, try not to get brush strokes and make sure your water is wet. Or not water was wet. Your paint is wet. Sorry, give me a second. I'm mix in a bit of water with that. Here, actually, I'm gonna unfocus just so you can see it. That's what it looks like now. I'm not sure if you guys ever really saw what it looked like before, but now it's a bit more thin. We'll actually get a bit of that. Sorry, I'm trying to, there's a hair in that for some reason, just a loose hair from the brush. There we go. So I'm going to try and keep this close to the camera so you can actually see it getting painted, but also I got to look through my eyes to paint it, so hopefully the camera's picking this up well. Okay, looking at the camera, it looks good. I don't see any problems. There's a bit of overspill, actually. You can see right there with the brown, the light brown over the dark brown. I don't really mind, because I'm not going to go crazy with this. It's not a display piece or anything. This is just my general model. We got another stone up here. Now this one's a bit harder, because the paint's still not doing great. But I don't mind if detail's lost on this one. What's important is there is still some red there to show that there is something. So I'm going to take a quick look. I'm not seeing any other bits of runes, so we can start highlighting. So I mentioned earlier the skin is more steps. That's because what I did wasn't actually the full process. I did the Xandri dust, and I did the wash. Now we actually do a second layer of Xandri dust. Look at that. That's when you want to mix it, starting to separate. So I'll mix that. I'll pause this. Alrighty, I'm back. Let's check it out. That looks a lot better. Just shake it in your hand. Some people buy like mixers and vortex mixers, or just those mixers for nail polish. Those also work, I imagine. I just shake it because, you know, I can. So let's lock in the camera. And so what we want to do is pick out all of the raised spots. So his chest is one. Sorry, I didn't actually show that. It moved the guy too much. I ended up painting his left and right pec. With the head, we want to go forehead. So I'm also trying to make sure this actually stays in view for you. nose. Beards make face highlights a lot harder, so sometimes I don't recommend painting bearded figures. It's easier to pick out details without the beards, in my opinion. I could, there's plenty of people who are good at it, but it's just easier for me. But he is supposed to represent kind of a Conan Barbarian style, so a beard's kind of required. We do these bits of muscle here, and you want space to separate the two, but still have a bit of that the line from the wash. I grabbed too much paint there, but that's okay. Like I mentioned earlier, you can always use it kind of like a wet palette. Sorry, I didn't realize my camera was cutting half of that off. There we go. We'll turn him around. He's looking pretty good. We'll just do the uppermost part of his hand. His fingers will be fine. We'll do this bit of muscle here, this under one there too, and that way the height, or we kind of highlight the bits that are important, and the wash gives a bit of depth. Sorry, real quick, I noticed as I pulled him up, I'm pulling out the black again for a bit of corrections. You can see that it's not, the leather he's holding is not properly painted. Try and keep that kind of thing accurate. Paint it all if you can. Again, 5 feet away, you probably won't notice most failures, because I think you'll be seeing this guy from like this distance kind of thing. You won't notice most of the problems with it. It's when you get really close that you'll notice things. So keep that in mind with your own painting projects. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to look good. And however you feel it looks good is how good it looks. So we're kind of missing, well, we've got the black. We'll try and paint in this guy's hair just a little. Oh, sorry, man, a cameraman would be really useful for this kind of thing. But yeah, it's looking good. Oh, right there's not finished either. So you know what? I'm just going to do a quick once over, then I'll return to recording, and I'll show you guys highlighting this guy. See you in a bit. Alrighty, back again. So here's the guy. So here's the thing. I'm kind of done with this model, more or less. I could actually just kind of leave him as he is right now, and he'd be fine. But we'll do a highlight, too, to kind of finish him up a bit. Now, my recommendation is to highlight Dryad Bark, use Mournfang Brown. To highlight Mournfang Brown, use Scrag Brown, if you're highlighting. I'm not going to highlight most of this, because most of this is actually fine. You could also do washes, like right here would be good for a wash. I'm not going to do it just because it's not really, I'm kind of done with this kind of part. I'm kind of okay with where it is. But what we will do is highlight his nice cape here. Now, unfortunately, that actually dried out while I was getting ready to paint it, so let's grab a bit more there. So you want to go with the heights, or the highest, sorry, just messing with my camera, there we go. The highest points of the model. Most of the time they actually make these pretty obvious to make highlighting easier. All the little creases. Actually, I'm not even sure if you're seeing, you can kind of see the crease of the way the light reflects off of that. And you want to do the edges. So I'm trying to keep this guy in view while also painting. There we go. So we've kind of finished the brown highlights on him. There's some people who do a lot more levels of highlighting, like they would highlight this, maybe shade it again, highlight again, and end with like much brighter colors and much more contrast. I'm okay with just a simple paint job like this. I don't really mind for myself. Now, we're going to move on to this cape, because this cape is really good for highlighting. And this one, you know what, I might actually do 2 highlights for it. So we're going to pull out that dark gray again. You can use, again, Mechanicus standard gray or whatever equivalent you've got, just a dark gray. And we go to every high point on these little bits of fur. I think, yeah, that should be pretty good. You can also actually dry brush this if you wanted. Like that, it kind of looks pretty good. One thing I won't really recommend is Games Workshop dry brush paints. I find they are effectively just, you know, they work they work less good than actual base paints, and you can just dry brush with actual base paint. So it's kind of its own thing. So here you can even see you can dry brush with smaller brushes like this. Trying to get most of the, I don't like wasting paint, so I try and get most of the bigger bits of paint off by actually putting them, by using it kind of, and then I dry brush with what's left. So you can kind of see that's kind of how it ends up looking. Now that's okay, I like that as it is. That horsehair, you know what, is really good for dry brushing too. So I'm going to actually switch from this small brush to this brush here. If I can get it in focus. So the brush, it's not doing too good. I think this brush is just about done. But making it wet makes it come out like this, so we'll see. It's had a good lifespan though, about 2 years. So that's one thing right there. Too much water, so dry brushing does not work. You do not want water in it. Like you want it damp, you do not want it wet. So I should have actually started dry brushing at the bottom anyway. And see, so there's a bunch of water in this brush itself. Sorry, you could dry it with a bit of a paper towel or something. I'm just gonna wipe it. Let's try that again. It's kind of better, but it's kind of already ruined the kind of process. That's okay, I don't really mind. I would have liked it better if it was more. Probably just shouldn't have dry brushed it at all, but it's already been dry brushed, so I can always revisit it too. Always remember that if you ever aren't happy with your work, you can always revisit it later on. See, that's how it's supposed to dry brush a lot better. See? And you can always go a little too hard with dry brushing, like right here, it's kind of covered the black, but that's okay. And as a whole, this guy, I'm going to say, is done. So, I did say, however, to, actually my first comment on the channel, that I would show off my horseman, finally fully painted. And you know what, I don't like, actually, before I do that, we are going to put a wash on that at least. The brown, this is my problem with the brown. Sorry, give me 1 second. I actually got to go find my brown wash. 1 second. Found it. I don't like 2 colors that are exactly the same beside each other. Right here's a problem. So I'm going to take a bit of Agrax Earthshade and just cover that. You can see it's already kind of darkening it a bit. Yeah, and you know what? While we're here, obviously you're supposed to highlight after washing, but yeah, I'm not going to because I don't really mind. This guy, I've kind of, I've got a video out of him. I've got him all finished. He's all set up to be my Imperial Guard General, and he's also had to be the Mongol Khan for my, for Thesauria. But yeah, sorry, back to the point. I had a comment, my first comment on my channel, actually, quite happy about that, where somebody mentioned they really liked how the horsemen looked from the kit bash itself, and I said, okay, that sounds good, thank you so much. And I finished up painting up the, I actually completely forgot the base. In short, at the end of this video, I'm going to show off my horsemen all painted up. So let's do the base. So, what we're going to do is, we are going to grab 3 greens. Now, I personally go with Death World Forest. Sorry, I probably won't focus on any of these. Wa Flesh, of course it focuses right after I say that. And Death Core Drab. Okay? And we also go with Bieltan Green, which is right here. You can obviously see I've gotten a lot of paints on other paints for the longest time. Anyway, what we do is we can start with any of these colors. It really doesn't matter, except the Bieltan Green. That comes on last. So you grab a bit of green, and you just go in lines across the base. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to try and sit this down. Make sure the camera stays focused on the base, and I'm just going to paint it from here. So you can do strips, you can do squares, you can do however. I do strips myself. And I try and make it kind of a consistent pattern. Alrighty. And obviously that doesn't look really that great. It's just green on brown. Doesn't really look like anything, which is why we have all the other greens. Now this is my substitution for not actually having any proper grass tufts that I like or know how to apply properly. Sorry, real quick, I just switched to Death Core Drab, much darker. But anyway, I wanted to have kind of a step, kind of like a low grass kind of base, but I don't have enough actual things to represent grass. So I ended up going with this instead, which was actually completely an experiment to try and see what I could do. And it actually worked out pretty good in my opinion. So you kind of try and fill it in many of the places that were not covered, that are still brown and that were not covered by the first green, but not all of the places. And this one you can be a bit more sloppy with. Again, doesn't matter which green you use in what order. Just kind of get the green on there. Okay, with that done, we can then move on to the final green, which I believe is Death World Forest. You can also, I've also thrown in, I'm not sure if I have it on any of these models, but I also threw in Death Guard Green. And I also tried Ogren Camo. Ogren Camo did not look good. I ended up getting rid of that. Here again, you don't need to cover all the brown, just most of it. And you just kind of replace some of these darker spots that are unused yet. And it doesn't have to be, very good. It's just random little grassy patterns. And it doesn't look, crazy amazing or anything, but, it's starting to look more like grass. Still not great, but, there we are. So you get kind of this, it's almost like a palette of, like, paint tests. That's how it looks. I'm going to pause it for a bit so it'll just cut straight through to when it dries, but I'll see you guys right after that. It shouldn't take long. Alrighty, and we're back. Most of it seems to have dried. Still got a glossy finish though, but it doesn't matter. We're going to use this Bieltan green now. And this is a dark, dark green. And we're going to do one layer. Where Athonian camo shade's almost like a sickly green, this is like a jade kind of looking, at least to me. It's a very, very dark green. Like this is like a foliage kind of green, which is actually why I use it for this, because I don't really use this for anything. I got it when I first started painting and never really came up with what to use it for. So this is actually a bad brush to use. It's not big enough. I'm going to get my larger brush. And you can see how much faster that covers. Give me 1 second. One problem with wash is you often don't get enough at the top there, and you gotta shake it to grab more. But yeah, and you can see it's kind of green all the way through now. And it kind of acts as a unifying color. It's like when you mix one common color in all of your paint together, and it kind of just ties it together. That's what this does. And I don't really do that for most of my paints, but for this grass texture, it looks good, in my opinion. I hope you guys feel the same. So we're going to skip looking at this dry for now, because I can just pull up and show you what it looks like in the end. Something a bit like this. And it looks vaguely grassy, and it's green and very nice. Now that's going to dry, but I'm actually going to, I'm going to move the camera a bit and move the paints out of the way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out a bunch of my horsemen and kind of do a little showcase of them. And I'll show you this guy after he's dried as well. So see you in a little bit. Hey guys, welcome back. So, I've gotten all my guys together. They're all ready. And we're going to look at them. So I'm probably going to release this also as a separate video, slightly different, because this video is massive. But yeah, we've got a Hornman here. You've seen him already. I've used him for kind of samples. We have the Bannerman, and you can see red's kind of the highlight color of this army. Alright, and we've got, oh, I got some gray on him, whatever. We've got a bunch of spearmen. Or javelineers. It'd be great if it would focus. There we go, let's lock that. Little blue jay. Mean caught, that's one of the Bretonnian bits. The shields, in my opinion, fit very well, especially these Berber infantry shields. I really like them. I think they fit onto this kind of thing perfectly. Let's see. These also are not bad either. These, I believe these are Late Danes or Huscarls or something like that. Shields. As do the bows from the Bretonnians. And yeah, they all kind of, I think they kind of look good. I could only imagine having a horde of these guys charging at you. And I ended up actually getting, so my entire progress with this was I was interested in the army. And my fiance's family were nice enough for Christmas to grab me a box of the Horsemen. So in the end, I actually ended up getting 5 from them. And then I bought the big box. And I've got, 10 horsemen here. And then obviously their lord, who I haven't painted his base. Oops, sorry. But that's just a layer of it, layer or two of administratum gray to cover it. So that's what that'll look like. His base looks like dried. And as a little bonus, I'll show you this guy, because I meant to show him in a video. Proper video dedicated to him. But yeah, he's got a bit of a, I think I mentioned him earlier, but he's got that little stone, And yeah, I kind of like a skinwalker, kind of pale skin idea for him. Alrighty, but that's all. Hope you enjoyed that video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Hey guys, welcome back. So, about 15 minutes have passed between my last bit and now. And I have gotten a lot done, but I've had to kind of accept that I'm probably going to be doing a bit more of this video tomorrow. Normally that would be fine. It's just tomorrow I have a tooth filling. So I can't promise I'm going to be fully, understandable. I should be fine, but, but for now what I've done is I have gone around and done the big colors, right? I got my Mornfang Brown. I went with, I went with some hair, these boots, this pack here, Same on this side, the fur, oh, sorry. The hair of this guy and the fur here, it wasn't great that they're so close together, but that's okay. I put red on all of the stones, all the little rune stones. I'm going to be coloring in the stone at some point. The biggest thing to stand out is the base. I'm going to definitely have to do that tomorrow, which, you know, it's fine. What I'll probably do is I'll try and finish all the base coating tonight, and then I'll do that tomorrow. I'm going to try and at least do one of these heads, though, for you tonight, and get that kind of sorted so I can do these all off camera. So, what I do, I told you, Deepkin Flesh, as always. Then you grab your Athonian Camo Shade, which, just a light, well, kind of like a gross green shade, really, is the best way to explain it. And it kind of gives this tinge of, like, rot kind of look. You can already see how gross that looks. Now, I'm just going to do it to all of them while we're here, just because, you know, we've got the camo shade out, may as well. You don't want to do too much. Wash gets a little funky when you overdo it. But, you know, enough to pick out details and so on. And you can even do this on the hair, too. Because I do a lot of wash for when it comes to, you know, these decaying kind of gross heads. Alright? And while it's still wet, we then pull out Carroburg Crimson. You can also do a bit of blue and purple washes. I just don't really have them on hand. I can't remember where I put them, but that's okay because they aren't necessary. So while it's still wet, kind of just blend it in there. And it gives this gross, sorry, a second, let me get a bit more Carroburg. It gives this gross, kind of just disgusting look. So one issue, you shouldn't do this so many heads at a time, because I'm not sure if you guys are seeing it, but these guys have actually lost the wetness in their thing, so it's not blending the same, which is okay. Sorry, it keeps going out of focus. I'm trying to rush this a little bit. You can kind of see it gives this like bloody, almost bruised look with the green too. And you know what? I gotta do some of this tomorrow, so I'm gonna pause it real quick. I'm just gonna grab the purple and blue wash. Give me a second. Okay, so I actually found them relatively quickly. So what we're going to do is now this is specifically Druchii Violet, a very dark purple. We kind of don't really need to do it, but we can. That one just do all over. But you can already see it's very, very strong. So water it down a lot. You just want a purple tinge. You don't want it to be essentially its own color on top of everything. So you can see how strong that is. I get a bit of water and almost wash it off. I could add blue, but we're doing pretty good here. And you can kind of see this. Now, it's very easy. We pull out Blood for the Blood God. And this, so here's the thing, this is more stylistic than anything. Realistically, the way I've painted these heads have been here for a while. They shouldn't have any fresh blood, but it's just a cool look, so I always put it on anyway. And if you can, try and make it realistic to some degree. Make it so, like I don't want to taint the horse's fur, so I'm not going to do it on there. But, you know, right over here. So first, the main point is, I've drawn these heads to not really have fresh blood, or painted them, but yeah, they're gonna anyway, because I love this paint. But they've been here for some time, so try and spread that blood around a bit. honestly not the best. I might revisit it later. Add a bit more. Don't be afraid to splash it on the face too, because honestly the blood would be going flying on top of a horseman. But yeah, it's kind of like how we want it to look. So I'm going to pause the video here. We'll pick this up tomorrow. You guys won't notice any difference, but I will. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this part. Tomorrow we're going to try and cover his skin. I might actually give him a golden hilt. We'll see. I also got to paint that little bit of brown on that arrow down there. But yeah, as a whole, oh, I also found the white paint too. But yeah, as a whole, we're going to kind of continue this. I'm going to try and do little bonus videos throughout the week. But I can't promise like more than one video a week. But if I'm gonna do my absolute best to get one every Friday. Yeah, that way you guys kind of get, you know, at least one video a week, and you know. I hope you enjoyed that. I'll see you guys tomorrow. You guys will not notice any difference. But yeah, have a good day. Hey guys, I'm back now. So, thought I would give you a little bit of an update as I've been going. I got paint all over my hand, but it worked out in the end. So, I will actually, let me grab a brush to kind of use as a pointer. So, I ended up covering fur and black ink, or black paint, sorry. Same thing, leather. Could probably do better. I'll revisit that leather soon. Painted all the horsehair and the hooves and the fur along here. I also did a few of the handles. I did both handles. It's hard to see. Both handles are black. I went with the leather on his wraps, black as well with the fur. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of this, but you know, it's okay. I ended up doing another layer of the fur here, of the cloth. There's horsehair, you know, the leather, and so on. And this is where I start doing the heads. So, this guy has a lot of heads with him. This one ended up getting black hair, and one of these on here got the black hair. So I think I'm actually going to do a live kind of version of this one to show you how I do the heads. And I'm also going to do metal. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do iron or lead belcher for all of the metal, right? And we're going to do deepkin flesh for the layers of skin. So I'm going to show you how I paint just one of the faces with the first layer, because I'm probably going to need to do 2 layers, and then I'll cut off, and you'll kind of see all the metal painted up too. I actually wanted to leave this mess up right here. So I was painting the black, and I thought, oh, wrappings here, I will do those as black. And I put like literally 1 stroke down, and I saw this one. That's part of the leather. So I painted that black. I'm actually going to leave that for my next brown color, which is why this one's not painted and that one's not finished being painted. So just like, there you go. But yeah, we'll show you 1 layer of the deepkin flesh, just so you can kind of see how that ends up going. Oh, sorry. So if I can get this to focus, so I'm kind of, there we go. So what I do with deepkin flesh is it's kind of an off-white, right? And it's kind of a pale, gross skin tone. It's actually funny. I'm looking between my camera and my actual eyes, and it's actually easier to see the details on the camera as I paint. So you see that? Alrighty. So, while that dries, you know what? I'm actually going to paint these live. It might get out of focus, but that way I can tell you about my faction, my setting, and all that, so I can explain it as we go. So, the setting is known as Thesaurus. Okay, it's a role-playing world specifically for, it's almost like D&D, but it's not. It's actually my own rule set that I worked on over the last 3 years. It's still in development, always being adjusted and stuff like that as I play test it with my friends. But oh sorry, actually I'm gonna try. I'm painting this, but it's like impossible for you guys to actually see. There, I'll try and paint you, like show you while I paint. But it's essentially, it's a setting largely feudal era, and in the far west, I guess it'd be, yeah, the far west, there's the lands of the Kaiserreich, which is essentially it's the Holy Roman Empire in the sense of a disunited kind of empire that's formed of Germanic people. But it's also essentially just 100 years off of the Germans at the time of Teutoburg Forest, so Arminius and them. The faction itself is essentially a mix of Germanic, kind of like just infantry, who serve the Kaiser, who rules over each of the various, I believe I gave them the title of Graf. I also made languages for each of the factions that are in universe, so some of the titles don't actually make sense. Some of them are just inspired by real life titles. For instance, Kaiser is literally just taken from the Germans. In the west, there's also the Imperit, which is essentially the Roman Empire. And to the east of the Imperit is the Etziadalians, which are my world's Italians. Almost every faction in my setting has at least one model in my collection representing them. For instance, these are specifically the steppe tribes. And they're in the far east, beyond the Sultanate. And they are essentially a small, well, not a small, a massive conglomeration of tribes. Some of them united, some of them disunited. It's essentially a mix of real-life Mongolia, a bit of Attila the Hun thrown in, a few factions from like Warhammer fantasy kind of thing, like the Hung, and the Ungols, which obviously are just inspired from real-life peoples. And also, there was a book I read a long time ago, and I can't remember most of the series. It was like Wolves of the North or something like that. And it followed a Roman general, and it was fantasy, like it wasn't real, but it was historical based fantasy, so there wasn't magic or anything. But it followed a Roman general named Ballista or something like that. And he went north, and he ended up encountering some of the tribes there. And he met with like horse nomad tribes near the collapse of the Roman, or the 3rd century, the crisis of the 3rd century. So that's kind of what I based these guys off of, is a mix of various nomadic groups throughout history. For language, I largely based them off the Mongols, though. For instance, this guy's title would be the Khan, which comes from the Mongol term Khan. But yeah, it's essentially a giant wasteland full of nomadic horsemen. The tribes hunt animals. Obviously, it's full of great beasts that they can hunt down for wealth and prestige. Actually, real quick, just to take a break from the lore, we're gonna switch to the metal now because the faces are kind of done. I'm gonna let them dry. We're gonna do some lead belcher now. Moving on though, back to the lore. Also, I'm upgrading to the bigger brush. The smaller brush was better for the faces. This one's going to be better for the metal. Some people say not to mix your metal when you wash it. I really don't notice any difference, but again, these are dollar store brushes, so probably not a major difference. Anyway, back to the lore. They're a mix of, as I said, the various tribes. Their territory is a giant wasteland full of monsters that they can hunt. Some of them do farm. Obviously, it's physically impossible to not farm for food, because you can't build a civilization off of just raiding. But there's a few tribes that farm. A lot of them would farm things like goats, horses even, like actual Mongols. Some of the tribes are obviously more brutal than others. Some would be cannibals and so on, which I actually even have models for representing cannibalistic mutants. But I'll show them maybe in another video. But the important point is, essentially, the Mongol faction is largely supposed to be like a great horde kind of thing, a far-off threat that might one day do something if I decide my players need something that's, a big threat from the Far East. I also have 2 empires east of them, which I'm trying to work on expanding that, but I've barely finished the west. I'm not even really finished it. I'm about halfway through. But essentially, the east for now is 3 empires. There's the what's known as the Tenno-Rhizom, which is essentially feudal Japan. There is Huangdigo. I believe that's the name I settled on. I'm not sure. I still got to revisit all of the Eastern languages and work them out a bit more to make sure they're all good. But for now, it's essentially Golden Age China, feudal Japan, and the Mongols. South of them, I was planning on a bunch of islander nations where I'm going to take a bit of inspiration from, like, there's a setting or a thing, the Ghost Archipelago or Archipelago, I'm not sure how to pronounce that one right, but it's got like the Ghost Archipelago, now I can't say the word. Anyway, it's got the tribals, which I like the idea of like a few islands full of like dangerous tribes, a few islands full of peaceful tribes, so on. And that one would be more inspired by Maori and other Far Eastern native populations. I actually do have an interesting thing with natives, because I myself am part native. I actually have a faction, my Wood Elves, or the closest thing to be equivalent to Wood Elves. They're just elves, but they actually use a lot of inspiration from Native American stuff, like the Anishinaabe and other things. I'm specifically Anishinaabe myself. But yeah, essentially, I try and inspire things that I feel would fit in, and try and make them unique from other things. Like, I liked, for instance, the elves from Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, but I also like the elves from Warhammer Fantasy. But the problem is the elves are very powerful, and I don't really have a whole lot of interest in elf models. I'm not sure what it is. I've just never really liked painting them, because it's, it's, I don't know. The important point, though, is instead of painting them, I have very few elf models, so I justified that with a bit of a Dragon Age lore kind of thing, where the elves were a great people, that they've been conquered, and that kind of is actually what led me to them being inspired by Native Americans, because I liked the idea of a kind of dynamic where the elves were a great people that ruled, so-and-so amount of land, and they end up getting conquered by everybody else. Some people are obviously fine with them. For instance, the Mongol faction does not really care one way or another what race you are. The German faction I have, the Kaiserreich, do. They do not like elves, because I haven't fully fleshed it out yet, but essentially their faction is a mix of, like I said, Germany, but they're also a mix of the hyper-Christian kind of ideas of like what people used to think feudal Europe was, where a pope might say a village needs to be burned, and it would just get burned because, God said so. Obviously, in real life, there's a lot more nuance to it, but in my setting, I'm not trying to create like a hyper-realistic world, so in my setting, the religious faction, the Kaiserreich, actually is essentially that, where the leader is fanatically loyal to the faith, and they demand, the execution of groups that stand in their way. For instance, the elves. But yeah, taking another break from the lore, we can take a look at this guy. So, we've got all the metal kind of sorted. Now, here's my biggest issue here. This has runes, as does his spear. He's a wealthy lord, so likely he could get some kind of magical trinkets and weaponry. But here's the issue. Having just carved in it can look good, but I like the idea of glowing. Here's the thing, I'm not great with glowing and OSL and, all that lighting kind of stuff. But what I'm going to do is actually, before I do this, in my setting, there is essentially lyrium from Dragon Age, or warpstone from Warhammer. In its raw form in my setting, it's bright green. But when it's harnessed by the dwarves and made into their, what they call Vemnad or Songstone, when they process it into a fine powder, it turns blue. So I can make this a bright glowing green with Tesseract Glow, which is a very good paint, I might add. And actually, sorry, I meant to show you guys this, but I ended up painting him off camera. This is that that creature. I can't remember what it's called. It's called like a word beast or something like that. It doesn't really matter. It's essentially, I actually went with a chunk of Vemnad that's unprocessed as his, oh wait a minute. No, that's okay. Yeah. Sorry, that little detail looked like one of those stones that they have carved like right there. I liked the idea. I actually read a bit of Darkoath lore, and it mentions the Darkoath, which are obviously all these models, fill these little ritual stones with blood as a, it's like a rune. So I liked the idea of this is one of those beasts that the tribes have been able to kind of get on their side, so they've adorned it with their, their kind of things. They got trophies, then they have these blood oath stone things, which I'm going to see as are like blessings or something. But I also like the idea that it is clearly a mutated creature. So it's carrying around this chunk of raw Vemnad, which mutates things around it, which is why dwarves need to process it for runes. The issue here, though, is that this would be runic. So I'm kind of caught. This is one of those decisions that you have to make when you're designing things to fit into established or even your own lore. Theoretically, I could go with unprocessed lyrium, or not lyrium, sorry, that's Dragon Age, unprocessed Vemnad, which would be cool, but it doesn't make sense that he would have this without being mutated himself. I could go with processed, but that means he had to deal with the dwarves, which, possible. Or I could do with like these stones where it's red and it's just blood. But again, what's the point of that if it's right on the sword there? The sword would be all bloody anyway. Actually, what's interesting also? The camera actually, in person, this metal looks a lot more like metal, but the camera makes it almost look see-through a little bit, like it needs another layer or two. I'm going to give it another quick layer. I think, though, this is kind of like a live demonstration of kind of my thought process as I paint models. You kind of, if you aren't given, obviously, it's a commission, you have a clear idea of what you're going to do. But for this, it's more like while I'm painting it, I have to think, how does this fit into my lore? It needs to make sense for the world to be consistent. So, for instance, and I also have to kind of set aside my personal preferences because of that. So while I would love to make this a glowing green, because that would be very nice, or even a glowing red, I can't do that because it has to fit into the world. So I'm going to make this a glowing blue, because that's what, in my setting, processed Vemnad looks like when it's enchanted onto a weapon. I'll be right back. I'm going to keep explaining lore. I just got to grab my blue. Which, to note, I always use Temple Guard blue. It's a very wonderful blue. So, one of the reasons in my setting the dwarves are largely untouched by other races and groups and factions is because the dwarves are the only faction that can actually harness Vemnad. Their immunity to magic, which I did take from Dragon Age and from Warhammer Fantasy, actually lets them process it, like I mentioned, into a powder, which they can then turn into, they can mix it with like a water and make like ink and tattoo it, or they can write with it, or they can, in most cases, engrave it into weaponry, like this. And that's actually why most factions don't mess with them, because dwarves are the only ones that can enchant gear. And you kind of don't want to get on their bad side, because they obviously keep the best for themselves. Another fun little bit, though, is that in my setting, dwarves are obviously the most scientifically advanced. They do not have any access to real magic themselves. But the dwarves themselves actually have guns. They have forged, flintlock rifles and stuff like that. and they've traded it with 2 or 3 factions total by now, which would be Ezio Dahlia, and which I actually have a model here. I have 2 models here to show you. So this is my Ezio Dahlian gunman. One of them, I've got a bunch. I use specifically the War Games Atlantic Conquistadors, which I could not recommend more. They are very good models. You can use them to replace your like for your old world empire. I didn't, because I've actually got an old like 6th edition set. But if you want, these guys are really good. Personally, for the basing, I went with a brick floor kind of thing, almost like a town, with these gold pieces and these gems. Now, this gem comes from this gem tape my fiance uses on these canes she's planning on selling. But she had a bunch of little cut-offs, and I was like, you mind if I use these? She said, yeah, no, go ahead. So I started peeling them out of the tape. So you get these nice little gems. Obviously not real diamonds at all, but they look really good. Like, even on the camera right now, they look good, but in person, they look even better. But on to the other faction. The dwarves have given guns to the Ezio Dahlians. I haven't decided why yet, but they've at least given guns to the Ezio Dahlians, my Chinese faction, and my Japanese faction. And I actually have a Japanese gunman here. This is specifically, I believe it's Fireforge. From the Samurai Wars kit. These are Ashigaru gunmen. Again, I have not actually painted any Ashigaru. I have, however, started on some Samurai, and I'm just gonna show you, just because I'm really excited about these guys. This is one of my Samurai. He's not even close to finished. Like, he's got a long ways to go. I actually kit bashed an officer for them. I really love this guy. Again, barely, like, not even close to finished, but you get the picture. Essentially, they traded guns with a handful of factions. And I can't find where it is, but I've got an ogre somewhere with a cannon. Oh, here's one. And obviously, the ogres, however, in my setting are half giants. They did not trade for the cannons. They stole them, in fact. Much like in Warhammer fantasy lore, the ogres are... It's actually interesting, though. In my setting, I decided ogres don't really fit, because they would be part of my greenskins faction, but I didn't really feel like they could fit in there, so they're actually half giants. By the way, this guy's had some time to dry, so we can really check out this. Now, we got some glowing weapons, but yeah. So, I'm going to try and rush this along a bit, because I just got an alarm saying it's about 10:15. I got to go to bed in like 45 minutes. I still got some stuff to do, so I'm going to try and rush this guy a little bit. I'm not going to rush him, like, do a bad job, but I'm going to probably cut out a bit now, just to speed things up. I do red on the stone, Mephiston red. Then I do a stone outline. I'm going to do, I'll just cut off, and I'll show you when I'm done with each color, okay? See you guys in a little bit. Hey guys, welcome back. So, painted up the dryad bark on him. Sorry, it's not really there we go. I thought it would actually be important to note, I completely forgot to mention this, always choose all of the things you're going to paint with the same color and kind of get them all done in one batch if you can. It sometimes helps. It's kind of what I do sometimes. I also, doesn't really matter. Sometimes I won't do it, but here you can see I painted this brown, like I said I would, and that. But I also moved up to one of his levels of pants, or whatever this is. I'm not really sure. Maybe it's a kilt. But I thought also right here. So if you look over here, it's going to be the brown, again. Then you see this fur on the outside, right? Well, I thought his cape's the exact same thing, so why not do the brown on there, too? Right? The horse. Here's the thing, we want the horse to be really, actually, I should note, too. I think I mentioned this. I really kit bashed this guy's head. But yeah, anyway, sorry. Just thought that was cool. I wish I got to get an actual camera for this. I've been recording all this on my phone. But if you look right, it's actually not a bad camera, I will say. If you look here, though, so we want this to be good contrast with the horse, but we also need it to not really... Horsehair kind of has the issue, in my opinion anyway. It's kind of hard to do it right, just for me. Other people obviously are great at it. I've seen plenty of people who are absolutely amazing, but I do not want horsehair to be touching something that is the same color if I can help it. So for instance, the hooves, that's okay, that's kind of unavoidable. So I can do the same color as the horsehair as the hooves. But you'll actually notice it's kind of the same here. I kind of have the horsehair here as brown, right? But it's kind of almost not, the brown it is that I used is not touching really anything that is the same brown. Like even here I added a bit of highlight so it kind of sticks out from the leg, so you know it's a different bit, right? But yeah, that's I missed a bit of the spot there. It doesn't matter though, it'll be fine. So what we're going to do though, is we're going to choose a color for that. Oh, sorry, knocked it. So I'm thinking we're going to do black. White horse, black hair looks good in my opinion. It kind of does mess with the hooves, and I could do hooves another color, but I kind of stick with black for all my hooves. I'm probably wrong. There's probably a lot more horse hoof colors, maybe like bone colors or browns or something, but I don't know. I stick with black though. But in that regard, I'm also going to move on to this. So if we're going to do the hooves, or the hair, and the hooves is black, we want to look for other things that are going to be black. Now, because the hair is going to be black, what we should try and do is, again, nothing that really makes direct contact. So right here, it's kind of the same contact. They're not exactly touching, but they're close enough that it might blend together. But at the same time, we also want it to look good on him, and we also need it to stick out. So I'm thinking we're going to stick with black hair for everything. And we might make him unique. Because if you look, this guy used black for his leather, and all my others kind of use browns and stuff. I might use Ushabti bone for his leather. I'm not sure. I'm kind of thinking out loud as I'm doing this video, but you know what I'm going to do? I think I might do black. It's going to kind of double up the black on this leather and on the hair and on the fur up here. But that's not too bad. And actually, in that regard, we also want to look at this right here. Now you have to choose something for the hilt here, or the handle, I guess, really specifically of the sword. I'm gonna have to do this wrap he's got around his arm. And also, often you'll find models repeat. If he has something on his right arm, he probably has it on his left. So always check, see if you want to repeat that on the second bit. Metals is another one, because I often need to do 2 layers for my metals. We're going to look at generally all the metals. So we got a shoulder plate here, obviously again, shoulder plate probably here, this armor here, his sword, and obviously his weapons on the back here. One thing I actually found ridiculous with this model is, while he is a very cool model, if you look closely, you arm him with a sword, right? So he needs a hilt. Here's the issue though. Here's a sword with a hilt. Here's another sword with a hilt. Now you could argue these are more like daggers, but either way, this chieftain is effectively holding 3 separate bladed weapons all at once, one of which does not even have a hilt to hold it. It's just kind of a bit ridiculous, but you know, maybe the point is to cut out one of these handles and pretend that's the hilt sword, but it doesn't really matter. What we're going to do is we'll paint the black, return to you in a second, and we'll go from there. See you guys in a bit.